And for more on the NFC Championship, let's head live to Seattle and rejoin Steve Weish once again this morning. And Steve, the obvious place to start is right there with Richard Sherman. You spoke to him after the game, and what was his mood when you spoke to him about 30 minutes later?
Nicole, when I spoke to Richard Sherman is a prime example of why the NFL and most teams give their players a good 15 to 20-minute cooling-off period after the game before they allow the media into locker room, because Sherman was composed and he was very articulate, as he normally is, and we'll see that interview in just a few minutes. But to get back to the Aaron Andrews interview, you see how emotional he was. There were a lot of other players that were as emotional and screaming like that on the field. They just weren't on live TV. And the fact that Sherman kind of made it about himself and his personal beef with Crabtree right there took the attention, unfortunately, off of one of the better games I've ever seen. And great plays by Doug Baldwin and Colin Kaepernick and Anquan Bolden. And so I want to take you to this video, this interview I had with him. I told you, again, he's composed and articulate, but there's a lot more to this story between him and Crabtree than Crabtree saying that Sherman wasn't the best corner in the NFL. I'll tell you about that after we hear from Sherman right here. Let's roll the tape.
Well, I think it's an unbelievable opportunity, and I was confident in my abilities. My teammates are confident in me, and it plays like that. That's when big-time players step up in big-time situations, and I was able to do that for my team. And Malcolm Smith was able to come up with the big interception, so it's a whole team effort.
Now, they only threw at you twice all game. That was the second time. Were you surprised that they came at you in a situation like that?
I was very surprised, but I was also prepared, and that's something I worked on throughout the whole offseason. Just being, mentally staying in the game. There's going to be times where you don't get tried for a long periods of time in the game, and last year, I would have some lapses where they wouldn't try me for freaking, 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter, I'd give up a pass, or not a big pass, but a slant or something like that, just because I wasn't as locked in as I should be. And I told myself that I would correct that this year, and I was able to. This was a total embodiment of that.
Was it nice to have the pass come to Michael Crabtree? He said earlier this week he didn't think you were the best cornerback in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm so glad it happened like that, because we've had our disagreements, and I'm sure he's going to have to watch that film over and over and over. I'm glad I could send him to the Heartbreak Hotel.
Now, speaking of Heartbreak Hotel, you're going someplace else. We're seeing something right here. There's like some broadcast news right here.
Oh, man.
About your team. What about that?
Oh, man, it's such a blessing. It's such an unbelievable opportunity for a bunch of nobodies, a bunch of guys who 5th rounders, 6th rounders, undrafted guys who've come together like a family and played for one another. And you really can't. It's a fairy tale story that you really couldn't write any better.
Richard Sherman, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, when the cameras were off, Sherman told me why he has this issue with Michael Crabtree. And again, he was offended by the fact that Crabtree said he wasn't the best corner in the NFL. And we know Sherman, he takes every slight personally. But he said his beef with Crabtree goes back to last summer when he was at a charity function that Larry Fitzgerald, the Cardinals wide receiver, threw in Arizona. He said Crabtree came up to him, talked a little smack, basically saying, I'm going to make your life miserable for you this season, this and that. Sherman said, he kind of took it as it was, football talk he has with a lot of players around the NFL. But he said Crabtree kept agitating the situation. Now, it didn't get physical. Sherman said it didn't take it from there, but the fact that Crabtree kept going there and going there, Sherman said he decided then to make it a point that every time he played Michael Crabtree, he was going to try to make his life miserable. And this is hardly the last that we're going to hear about this. Michael Crabtree, an excellent player whose season, a shot at the Super Bowl, ended with Sherman making a play and then taunting him after he tried to make this play. Sherman, meanwhile, he's going to continue to escalate things because he just doesn't let stuff go. He holds a grudge. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. It's only going to add another layer to this great rivalry between the Seahawks and the 49ers. But a lot more to the situation with Sherman and Crabtree. It's going to be interesting to see how that carries on in the future. Back to you, Chris.
Steve, thank you very much up in Seattle with some great inside scoopage there for us. And let's talk about this, you guys. Let's talk about how Richard Sherman reacted on the field. And LeVar Arrington, we'll go to you first. Do you have a problem with the way Richard Sherman was simply speaking his mind?
I have a problem with the way everybody is trying to frame it up as though this was some wild out of control animal that was on camera before he was ready to talk. I mean, the dude is smart. The dude is articulate. He was articulate in that moment. Now, if people don't understand where he was coming from, now that's another thing. Could it be considered and interpreted as crass? Sure. Did he show a level of respect or restraint as it applies to media conduct? No, he didn't. But this is football, people. And for every person that we look at, I'm hearing the comparisons of how it's the mouth versus the man and different things like that. Well, here's the deal, right? I don't know where Peyton Manning came from, and I certainly don't know where Sherman came from. But what I will say is people come up a certain type of way. I'm sitting here listening to the way he was talking and the way he was going at the camera and stuff like that. Made me start thinking about times that I was in pickup basketball games or when we were racing in the street with neighbors and friends and different things like that. And let me tell you something. Does trash talk become a part of everyday living at certain times? Yes. I don't think that makes it wrong. I don't think that it makes him classless. I don't think it makes him an idiot or a lot of the names that people are saying about him. I think that you might have misinterpreted where the dude was coming from. Look, I called my helmet Excalibur when I played. I called my pads and everything I wore my armor. You're talking about guys who go out there on the field, and there is a certain type of mentality that some of these guys bring onto the field. He still had his pads on. He was still on the game field, and he was still in mode. So I don't even think that there should be justification of, oh, he needed 15 minutes. Oh, he needed that time. Sure, guys need time to calm down and cool off and will probably say things a little bit differently than what they would on the field. But make no mistake about it. All the people out here pointing their finger at Richard Sherman and trying to judge him for being out of control and different things like that, I think it's ridiculous. Ridiculous. It's football, people. And you were entertained by one of the best corners in the game. Enjoy it instead of always having something crazy to say.
Gave us a nice little encore entertainment as well. He entertained us on the field and afterwards.